staged the wipeout of intelligentsia by Hitler is a great miracle. And in terms of movement disorders, one can think of two people who escaped from that, and the other one was obviously Pope John Paul. So in 1944, he flees Poland and becomes a medic with the Canadian Army. He happened to walk into a Canadian regiment and said, here I am, I'm a Polish doctor, I can help you. So in 1946, Richardson restarts practice in Toronto. Having served in the military. 47, Olszewski arrives in Canada with 25 cents in his pocket. He was repatriated here with the regiment because they loved him so much. He happened to meet Dr. Penfield on the train. Penfield says, there's something better we can do than being a night porter. Here's my business card. So got rid of all of the administrative stuff and got Olszewski retrained as a physician. 55, Richardson is consulted by his neighbor in Toronto, who was out of the original series of 6 cases. There were a couple of Canadian Army veterans who were in air triangle across the Toronto. 61, Olszewski arrived at University of Toronto Chief of Neuropathology. He hadn't been in Montreal before then. John Steele began his residency in neurology. John Steele is our honorary chairperson. John, from doing this seminal work as a resident, has gone on and spent his career in the island where there is a complete which is rather like PSP, but it is unique to those specific islanders, and John has had a tremendous career doing that. And in 64, Richardson presented his cases to the American Neurological Association. So at that presentation, he was presenting, and there were 2 chairs of the session. Sitting behind him was Dr. Derek Brown, who was chair at Harvard, who was a New Zealander who had arrived at Harvard by way of London and Montreal, and the other was Dr. Houston Merritt. And Dr. Houston Merritt had written a textbook in neurology that went into 17 editions. Dr. Merritt looked at Dr. Denny Brown and said, I've never seen anything like this before. And Denny Brown fired back at him, it must be drinking water. But when we think about this in terms of we have all of the technology that we have, and these were Dr. Richardson's tools. Now, this is quite accurate because that's a modern litmus stethoscope. He had an old Rappaport Sprague, but at any rate. And you say, well, what's the coinage doing there? That's the way just check for fine motor discrimination is. Can you tell a dime from a quarter, from a penny, etc.? And those are old techniques. And then techniques of your 2-point discrimination was, and a tuning fork to tell how one's vibration sense is, and the ophthalmoscope to look at the optic nerve and the retina. So, and that was basic diagnostic tool that Dr. Olszewski and specifically same as we used back in medical school, and the appropriate stage. So everything tells us about this condition. We have, it's not known. It's so difficult to recognize. It's so difficult to see. And I think what I said about Dr. Denny Brown and Dr. Merritt, you can say the delay in recognition is epitomized by this expression that Sir Charles Simons reported when a resident asked him a question when he was a visiting professor, that had he ever seen something before, a neurologic phenomenon, and he said, seen it 100 times, but observed it never. And when you think about that, it's a very profound statement in terms of we do depend on physicians' powers of observation. But the challenges for early diagnosis in this disorder are huge. Yes, we know it's a 4-repeat tau-mediated disorder, but it doesn't present in one specific way. So the classic disorder, Richardson syndrome, is probably about 20 or 25% of them. PSP, which stands for Parkinson's, just looks like Parkinson's disease. And in fact, in a large series of pathologies that I'll show you, there are about 12.5% of people pregnant have PSP. They were never diagnosed very much. And this work is major neurological centers. And then there is a form with rigidity and this type of jerking, and PSP, PAGF means episodic gait freezing, where people will be walking and suddenly cannot proceed. And there is an additional variant where you have a progressive fluent loss of speech. You take most neurologists confronted with who has a loss of speech. The first thing they will say. So the other thing that's interesting in terms of this, and this is what makes this so difficult, is that in this recent case series in terms of 64 cases of PSP, is that they had other brain findings as well. So 20 of the 64 had features of concomitant Alzheimer's disease. 33 had white matter rarefaction. This is a phenomenon that was originally described at Western. The significance of it, we don't really fully, we thought we understood it in terms of white matter problems in multiple sclerosis. However, a recent article in Movement Disorders sort of cast some doubt on this, but at any rate, where you see the white matter, it sort of takes you out of thinking in the PSP line, because white matter disease and gray matter disease are different things. So all of this makes it difficult. And then these are pathological things that I won't cover. So, PSP symptoms, early, loss of balance, development of visual symptoms, usually described as blurring, and I'm going to get to that later in terms of, because this is the phenomenon where your eyes don't work and you go to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor puts your eye in his machine, and he looks and he says, your eyes are 20/20. I can't figure out why you can't see. Your eyes are 20/20. We will get to that. Development of personality change, irritability, being argumentative, sort of difficult things to tell, in terms of the age group that we occupy, and that these are prime-of-life diseases. Development of light intolerance, persistent squinting, and neck rigidity. So, CBCD, on the other hand,